Welcome to the channel. In this video we are going to be taking a look at the metro transport system, which was introduced to the game as part of the 0.8.84 update, which was released into the beta test branch on the 12th of September 2022. This video is going to consist of three parts. In the first part, we're just going to go through, take a look at the buildings and build a very simple one-way metro system running across the map here. And the second part will be a slightly deeper look at the manual construction issues surrounding metros. And then in the last part, what I'm going to do is a bit of an outro where I'm going to talk about potential issues in the context of my Seven Crosses series, where what I want to do is build a fully integrated public transport system. Anyway, that out of the way, we might as well get started. The reason we're on this map, this is my divided map, which I played on a long time ago. I don't really think it's suitable anymore for playing since the water update. Also want to draw your attention to the fact that the outline now has a red edge and a blue edge, which is one of the other changes with the new update. And the reason why we're playing on this map and in this corner is the fact that the ground is very flat. That means I'm going to avoid any complications of trying to run tunnels underneath the ground. We're playing with unlimited money, so we can build everything we can, and well, we'll just get stuck straight in. Before we get into actually building anything, I'm just going to show you the various new options and one or two things that we need to pay attention to. Now, the first one, this is a build metro railway. This is actually a surface bit of track like this, and we can just let it build like that. And so this is effectively can be used to run metro across the surface. But it's worth noting at this point that if I build a normal train platform and then I try and connect this up, it won't connect. But what you can do is do this. Now that actually looks like you could actually run a metro train into an ordinary station, but if you built this configuration, what will happen is when you try to set up the line, it will tell you that this is not an appropriate station. The surface track is actually for making connections to railways for a reason we'll explain when we get to it. So moving on, the next one is, you can see we've got three bridge options. These work exactly the same way as normal bridges that's been in the game for some time. And these are needed to connect up the elevated sections of the metro. And as already mentioned, you can't build surface stations like this. So when you're setting up a metro, you're either underground or elevated above the ground. So the next one is the actual tunnels. What I'll do is I won't actually show you the tunnels, but this is the option over here. It's found alongside the normal tunnel. Then if we go to depots, now this is quite interesting because this is actually an end station and it's in the depot section of the map, but it's not a depot. It's the only building where the metro's trains can actually turn round, because metro trains don't turn round in stations like the normal trains do. And what we'll do is I'm just going to put this in straight away, because this is for the line that we're building. This is very much something that we need to do. And I'm just going to kind of point it across the map like this. That. And we're just going to let it build. And of course we go underground. Play a bit faster. So it kind of zaps up very quickly. Just to show you that you can see there's no options whatsoever to do it. But what you can do is set the time interval. And that's going to be fairly important when we actually get to setting the line up. And if we go back to here, I'm going to skip over the passenger stations just for the moment, and I'm going to go to the end. And what you've got here is the electrical connections. Now, I'm not exactly too sure what is going on here. If I turn off this and we come to the electrical stations, you'll see that they all look the same, but they just take slightly more different resources to build. So I've got a feeling this is a minor bug, that what the devs have been doing is working on different amounts of materials required to build this. But as far as I can tell, they're all exactly the same. And what we do, and this connector is actually underground, but it's probably worth noting that you can actually use the normal connector for track that's above ground. In fact, I'll just show that to you as well. So if I put a normal connector in like this, and then we put the metro route, you can see this just joins up exactly the same. So if you've got above ground track, what this is the power connector. And that probably leads on to something that's worth noting, is that maybe if you are laying an overhead metro system, you're going to need to come to the ground to actually make the electrical connection as well. So what we're going to do now is go underground, and I'm just going to show you the actual tunnel now, which is pretty straightforward. You can select the tunnel. Now, one thing you want to be aware of is the fact that the tunnels are two-way and the direction is predefined. So if you're like me, you live in the UK, you can't actually have left-hand drive. Everything is right-hand drive with respect to mode. And what you do is you just connect up things there. And also, I'll draw your attention to the fact that you can go out the back. Now, that's going to be quite relevant if you're doing circular tricks, because if I just let that build, and while that's actually doing it, I'll just show you, this is where this spacing comes in. So although this is a building that can turn the actual trains round, it can also be used to space trains. The only thing I haven't tested is whether you can use multiple instances on the same track. And what I'll do very quickly is fish up the mods. Let's put a power transformer in. I'm going to shove it up about there and need a substation, because we don't need a substation, sorry. I must admit, I hope that the modders will produce a higher power capacity for this, because I'm pretty sure that a low power may be a bit of an issue. I'm just going to connect that up, and of course the first thing we're going to need to do is set up the import. And what that means is we should now have power to the transformer here, and of course this has got road connections as well. So you can, most of the underground buildings do have surface road connections, so they're not completely hidden, they just can be a little bit difficult to spot. So what we're going to do now is just move on to the actual stations. Now, I don't know if this is deliberate or just the fact and a bit of an oversight with this update, because you remember it is in beta testing. Now, the M indicates the stations as everything else does, but when you look at this first, it looks like there's only two stations. These are the two above ground stations, and by above ground stations, it is actually elevated. But the other two, we can find them, are the underground stations, and there's two. There's a metro platform without an entrance and a metro platform with an entrance. And again, I even though this has got an above entrance, I'm just going to put in here. Now, I'm not going to put too much track in. And what I will show you, we know we're going in that direction. Now, one thing that did confuse me when I was looking at this to start with is the pedestrian links. If you look on the left hand side, you'll see 4 pedestrian links, and you'll see 3 pedestrian links between the tracks. What you need to be aware of is the 4 on the left are at the surface, the 3 on the right are below the surface. I'm just going to drop that in there. I'm just going to pause. I come to the surface and just show you. So these just come off like this in the normal way. Now below here, you've actually got to connect these, because of course you're going to be connecting to the surface. What you've got is a pedestrian tunnel, and what you can do is curve up here. But what I will warn you is if you do something like that, I'm not going to let the game run. What can happen, the game gets a bit tetchy here. You can see what we've effectively done is obstructed the actual tunnel, but sometimes if you use the Q key you can get away with it, but obviously we can't this time, so I'm just going to need to remove that. One way you can do it is and get away with it is, well, there's various ways. I'm just not going to go through all of them, but one thing you can do is get back to here, is just go straight up like that. And you can actually curve over a little bit like that. And we should be able to get a tunnel out. Nope, still, it can be a real pain anyway. What I'll do is I'll do the direct ahead as an example. But I've gotten, so if we go directly ahead like that, as long as you keep it relatively perpendicular to the station, you can get this out here, connect that to there. Now it will snap to the tunnel, but what you can get though is a bit of a problem with the pickup on this area here, especially if you've got a pedestrian crossing in the center. So it can be a little bit, this is where you've got to be a bit careful what you're drawing. That's it. Now what I'm going to do is very quickly turn this off, and I'm just going to show you here about, and this is more in relation if you want to build your own track. The amount of resources you need is relatively low. You can see we only need 9.3 tons of bricks, 9.3 tons of steel, 2.7 tons of boards, 39 tons of gravel, 13 tons of prefabs, and 2.7 tons of electro components. So you need all the resources you need in a rail construction office. But the real stinger is the 3,594 work days. And you can remember, this isn't a particularly long length of track. And what I'm going to do is just build it. And just to give you an idea that actually building this track is quite slow. And bearing in mind that we're literally gone, what? Let me just measure it to show you. We've built, what 273 meters of track. Well, not even that really, because and so that gives you an idea of how long it's going to take to build these tunnels. Now I'll talk a little bit more about that later on. So this is the actual underground one with above. Now the next one we need to look at is where is it? This is the one that's completely underground. I'm gonna pause again. I mean, we'll get this all sorted out. And what you're going to get is, again, I'm going to keep everything relatively tight together. And if I let this build, what you'll see, it is actually building. There's a lot going on underground. But what you'll see is we get a lot of little square blocks here. So this is quite useful for tucking in under buildings. But be aware that if you've got an existing building, let me just put one here, just for argument's sake, like that. If you try, just let it build, and if you come to here, you can see it says you can't build, so you can't build underneath an existing building. But so that's something you need to be aware about when you're actually planning your towns. Anyway, let's just get back underground. Apologies for... Now, again, if I show you the footpaths here, because I didn't... What this station is, it's got no connections to the surface except these here. So what you've got to do is actually build underground tunnels. Now, what you can do is exactly what I've done there, but with a little bit of experimentation, what I've actually found is, and it pays to do this first, but you need patience to do it, is if you actually see here, it says there's a pedestrian underpass. And what you can do, you can only build one each end, but then truthfully, you only need one each end as well. If you can get a pedestrian underpass there, you can do is do that, and you can put another one at the end. I have tried the distance. You can get in really, I mean, depending on what you've got on the surface, I mean, you can go out the wrong way round. I mean, you can go like that. There's nothing that says that you can't, but of course you have to connect with the tunnel like that. And then of course what we can do is exactly what we did before. And what I found is that if you actually use and come out very perpendicular, you can actually just build this little mechanism in the front here. like this, and on the surface you get a little up top bit piece like that with that there. You can see how long the station actually is, but of course you've got nothing going out the side. Although I've probably got every confidence that there won't be long before somebody in the modding community actually does it. And again, you can see how long it takes, and this is maximum speed, remember. So that's now connected to there. Now what we're going to do next is actually go above ground. But what I've found is what we probably need to do is get a little bit away from here. Now you can go up, but the game seems to be a bit temperamental. But it doesn't. It's almost like it's resistance to going up above ground. So what I found the easiest way to actually lay the tunnel is to actually go like that and actually come from the surface and come down towards that there. Just connect this up. Oops, sorry. Up there. Now, another thing I've found is that if you just go to the surface, if you put it alongside, it can get a little bit tetchy, but you kind of come down. Actually, let's just give it a go. Yeah, I mean, ideally I would like to do it this way, but the game seems a little bit sensitive. So what I've found is it's actually safer to avoid that. I'm not sure if that will work. We'll give it a go just out of curiosity. But I've found that if you do something like this, it won't actually let you. Oh, it's let it done. But when they're side by side, I mean, maybe with a bit of patience, it might actually work, but it can be a problem. And also, one thing I have found is the potential connection issues from the power perspective. Let me just see, let that build through. And of course, what we are now is above ground. And I know it's pretty awful, but and what you can do is actually run. Again, you can snap in like this, but what I will say is that you've got to be a little bit careful, because the actual above ground stations, where is it? Got a small one in. And remember that we've got to go out and get to these on a bridge. So we're just going to put one here. And then we're going to find a metro bridge like this. And you can come up to a bridge like that. So this is a small station. And what you notice is that this doesn't actually have any road connections. It only has footpath connections. And again, quite interestingly, it's actually got overhead ones. So if you, I'm going to take a chance here, guys. I must admit, I'm not. So what you can do is that steel or concrete. What you can do is create an overhead gantry like that as well. And plus you've got the surface ones below. So you can take this in using footpaths over a gantry, which is pretty cool. Now, if we move on back to rail and build the large one actually has road connections. Again, I know this isn't realistic, but I don't want the track to get too long. And what you'll see is that we can, again, just flip out there. And we can just hook that up there. Like that. And just let that build. And again, if you look at this station very carefully, this one's got 2 road connections. In fact, what it's really got is roads passing underneath it. So I'm not 100% sure whether this is actually, again, if you come back to this one, whether you've got to put these overhead connections in to get people up. Oh no, if you look very carefully, you can see a ladder around that leg. You can see ladders around this leg. So these roads are really through roads through the station. And of course, if we show the platform again, this has got elevated connections and lower connections as well. Now the fun starts, because this is an end-to-end line that we're building here. Now we've got two problems. One is that the end connection, which is down in the depot here, is actually underground. So we've got a choice. If we want to turn the train round, we've either got to go underground, but also there's a problem. We've got to actually get the train on the network. So what we need to do is come here, and we're just going to, oops, you down, drop the line down here. And so just let that build. Now what we could do is go underground and put an end connection, but you also got to remember is we need to put in a depot. Now if I come in here, I'm just going to put a short length of track in like this. I'm just going to splay it a little bit like that. Now what I'm going to do is run out like that, and then we're going to curve round like that. So this is the alternative. If you've got a surface one and you want to, you can also do it underground if you don't want to use an end connection. But so that actually turns the train round. Oops, for some reason I've got the contours on. Now what we can do is we're just going to put a train depot in like that. And what you can do is this will actually connect, but what we need to do, what you need to be aware of though is the directionality of the track. Remember that these tracks actually have a direction in themselves. It's connected. So when you're connecting the depot up, what you're looking at is a line that needs to go in like that, and possibly a line if you want to do a return to the depot that way. So what we've now got is an end-to-end system like that. And hopefully, if everything's gone and all the connections have been made, and I must admit I've had a few problems with connections, but it's shown that we've got power, although we don't have power supply to the buildings, but I don't think that makes a difference. And what we'll do is just go into here, and in here we can actually buy metros. Now I've got all available metros enabled. There isn't a wide range of metros. We've got the London Tube Underground, 65,000. And if we actually go to here, we don't. So effectively, the earliest we've got a metro is 1968. Is going to be our first metro. This metro ECS, top speed 80 kilometers an hour. I think 80 is about the top speed. We've got this one at 60, which is there. What I'm going to do is we're going to buy 1, 2, 3, like that. And what we're going to do now is we're going to set up a line there. I'm not going to worry because we've got no passengers. We're not going to worry about the actual settings. And of course, what you've got to do is add the there and then come back the other way like that. Come back above grounds like that. And then what we should be able to do is release the train. We have liftoff. And we'll just very quickly just have a little bit of a follow round. And you see the train will run in here. What I'll do is I'll just follow it through to the end, the actual turnaround depot, just to give you an idea of what it looks like. Looks pretty cool, actually. I must admit, I'm going to be quite a big metro fan, and of course, to see the train underground, you've got to do it. It'll come in here. Of course, you can imagine the passengers getting on and off. And then we've got the next station there. And then the metro will run through into the turnaround station here. train moving? Or was he stopped? Let me just see. Yep, he's running backwards and forwards. Now what I'm going to do is add the other two trains, although we're going to have to find the train itself. Now what these trains will do is they will follow each other around like this, because at the moment you'll be aware that we've got no signals, but what we can do is come over to here. Let's go underground. Here, sorry. This is collision trains cannot pass. What you can do is set a fixed time and then put in 60 seconds. Because what will happen is we watch as the trains come into this area here. If we pick up this, what you find is this train will leave almost immediately. It should do. The next train will come in, and then what it should do is wait 60 seconds. So at the moment we've got, this one's just left, this one's just arrived. So what this does is it sets a 60-second gap between the trains, which is virtually the equivalent of line spacing with buses. Now, one thing I will show you is, and we're not going to mess about with the line, but if I come down here, I'm just going to put a tunnel there. Right, what I'm going to do is put in a way, show you a way you can put signals in, but it is a little bit time consuming. I'm going to let the game run. Actually, I need to put a station in, because at the moment this is a bi-directional track. If I very quickly put a underground station in, oops, like this, what you will see is, because I've broken the tracks now, I come in here. I don't know if you guys can see it, but you can actually put signals actually in the tunnels by breaking them up. But what you need to be aware of is the fact that if I, oops, come in here, cancel that. This directionality, because if you put in a signal like that, it's hard to see, but you can see this is two directional. But if I change that so it's facing that way, the train will actually turn around and say this can't work, because the actual direction of the train, let's get back to here, is that way. If you're going to use signals, you're going to have to be very careful, make sure they're the right way round, and what you could do is put them in there. What that would do was enforce the distance between the trains, but it's going to be very slow and cumbersome. And also what you could do if you had a problem with stations, which is what was the reason for that collision, is that if you come out, say you come out a short distance like that, and then like that, just let that build. What you can do then is insert a signal just like that. What that will do, I mean, I don't know how close you can get. What that will do is prevent the train coming in here and colliding with a train that's actually loading in the station. But truthfully, if you're in that situation, oops, I've got that one. Probably safer to actually use this building here to set the distance. Now, one thing I don't know, and I haven't tested, is whether if you had multiples of those along the same track, because it is, trains can pass through, that you can maintain the spacings that way. 60-second intervals. I'll just see if the train is. Do we have any trains waiting? No. Okay, so we obviously got trains running around. Let me just have a quick look. Got one running up that way. Got one there. We got a third train here somewhere. Anyway, guys, I think that is enough for an introduction to the main structures. You can see it's quite interesting to build, and I think in some ways it's going to be quite challenging to set this up. But what it does do is open up the potential for creating an integrated public transport system. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to very quickly put together a small town and put down a construction site. You can see here what I've done is I've put the game on absolute minimum resources, so I don't have to worry about education and all the other stuff. But of course, what we will need to do is put in food. We'll have auto purchase here. We'll have a few people here. They're going to need a power supply, which is the reason why I put this block up here. So I'm just going to put this in here. I've turned off fire, by the way, so that's the reason why I'm not. And what we're going to do is just put in a construction office, helicopter, rail construction office here. Put that in. And just connect that up with road. Like that. Now the construction office itself, we're just going to let it build. I will say I'm getting a little bit into uncharted territory now. So you can see here we can't connect the construction office directly to the metro line. What we're going to do is put in a normal track out like that. It's going to come out like this. Represent a normal construction office. Put a bit of a crossover in. Of course, what we can do here is put in some signals like that, so the trains have got a little bit of discipline. And we'll just put a mixed signal like that. Now, once we've built the track, whoops. What you can do is actually connect the metro track to the normal rail track like that, as I've already demonstrated. So we're going to get a metro track there. And then what we're going to do is go underground. Again, the game can get... The gradient can be quite sensitive. I'm trying to split the track out a little bit. Like that. And of course you can go underground curve because the tunnel will allow you to curve. And then what I'm going to do is we're just going to... Oops. I'm going to kind of go round in a circle. Like that. I want to turn this off because we don't... No, stop. Okay. I'm going to have to delete all this and do it again. Okay, welcome back. What I've done is I've rebuilt the track back up again now. Track is now ready to go. We've now got our train here. What I need to do now is put this on auto purchase. So we're just going to tell it to buy everything we need, because to build tunnels we need everything that's going. So we're going to need fuel because we're running construction trains. Now again, just before we start this off, pay attention to the sheer number of work hours. Hopefully this is going to work. Now if we buy a boring machine like that, get this here going, get our workers, what we're going to do is assign when they're in need. Okay, and what you'll see here, it actually says needs track connect construction terminal, no train set available. And so the boring machine doesn't seem to want to build above level track. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to buy a normal train, come in here, something that's super powerful. I've actually got all my mods switched off, haven't I? Oh, we got the super KZH. Make sure this is actually allocated. What we're going to do is let the game run. We should get some workers come in. What you see is the actual train guy will come out here and start to build this. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to auto build this. Don't worry about the power cables. What should happen now is the borer should come out. Now I have noticed that the borer can be a little bit kind of tetchy. Let's see if that will work. I must admit, I haven't done that much work on this. Okay, what's actually gone wrong here? Let me just check the signaling. Yep. Because of course we need this to be bi-directional. Yep. Okay. There's my mistake. Try again. Right, we're allocated both. And one thing, what I'm expecting is the borer to come out, but obviously the borer doesn't want to build this section because it thinks that this is above track. And you can see we've got lots of workers here. Right, I think what I'm going to do is, just as a test, we're going to build that. What's up with this now? Okay. Oh, it's because this needs a bi-directional signal here. Put that there. And of course, the boring train doesn't follow the rules of the metro. The one thing I haven't tested, and I don't really want to get into it in this part, is if we go back to this here, whether you'd need two construction trains. You would need the borer to do the underground sections, and then these sections would have to be built with a normal conventional train. But what I do want to show you as we go back underground is why you're going to need a borer to actually do this, because if you actually look at this job here, I know we don't have a lot of workers on the train, but you can see how quick with the borer how quickly this actually goes down, where if you compare that with this train, if you click on this job, you can see that even though this is a fairly powerful surface train, he's really struggling to do this connection. Where if you're laying serious underground track, you are definitely going to need a borer. I think that winds up this section on the manual building. There's probably a few other issues around which may cause a problem. You've got the train coming above the surface there. So what I want to do now is just wind up with a general overview. Yes, metros are going to be fun, and I think they do open up the potential for an integrated transport system, but whether we can get it to work is another matter. I think also they're very expensive to build, so they're certainly not something you're going to rush into in the early game. Also, the restricted numbers of actual metro trains is going to be an issue, although I think when does the underground's probably the earliest one. It comes in 1938. Let's just have a by that very quick. That's quite a long train though, isn't it? It's 62 meters long. I think that might be longer than these shorter trains here. Let me just check. Yeah, this is only 40 meters, so again it's probably applies to the underground one as well. If you want to go early for metros and if someone doesn't come up with a mod, then what you may end up with is having to use the London Underground, which means you're going to need to use bigger stations. So that's a potential issue. So metros are very much a late game addition, which you would probably have to fit into an existing city. So maybe if you are planning on using metro later on, you're going to need to put gaps in order to be able to put these buildings in. Although again, I'm confident that it won't be long before the modding community will give us extra stations with different varieties and stuff like that. The next thing I want to talk about is the fact that in my Seven Crosses series, I was going to have a completely underground network running in two different directions, so I wouldn't need an end connection. But I think this spacing capability with the end connection here is going to be very important, and I do wonder whether I might need multiples to keep the trains at distance, because trying to put all the individual signals in is going to be very painful, and I'm not sure that I would want to do it. Maybe I might give it a go. And of course the really big issue is the fact that you've got to use overground depots, which is acceptable, which means that at one point the track's got to come above ground to connect to a depot, or alternatively to a main line that has access to a depot somewhere on the map, because you can buy these metro trains anywhere and then send them along the normal rail track to come in, as long as there's a connection. Although you're gonna have to be aware of the directionality of the track so that you can get that going. And then of course the other problem is the constructor trains, because you could either build a dedicated train construction office, or that construction office is going to need to connect to normal rails, and then you're going to have to take off the normal track, which is like this. So you're going to have to come in with a normal track, and then just accept that, and then actually connect it to the metro, which will then allow you to actually connect to the underground sections. And that will obviously also apply to the... Actually, let's just do a quick test. We just build a bridge very quickly. Just switch that on. Let's buy that very quickly. And then... No. So you'd have to have a length of ordinary metro track. Like that. And then... something like that. Actually, she's just going to do another quick comparison. Let me just turn that off. See which is the most expensive. So to build this would cost, and if we build a metro track, that 1.1 tons. They're roughly the same size. This is only a quick overview. The surface metro track is roughly the same. Yeah, they're probably exactly the same. But of course, if you do the underground, yeah, the underground section needs boards, steel, and all sorts of other bits and pieces as well. You know, so the underground track is going to be more expensive. Plus, you've got that massive amount of workforce to do the tunneling. So that is not going to. There's not going to be no cheap way around that. I think I've got a lot to think about with respect to building the metro in the Seven Crosses series. If you're interested in that, I will be doing a completely separate video where I'll be building up the metro in the Seven Crosses series and addressing some of these issues more deeply. But this is where I'm going to leave it. Hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you found it interesting. And the next video will be on trams. So until next time, whatever you do, enjoy your gaming.